Good evening, keepers of the cash. Gary B, the casual comic guy here, and joining me this Thursday, I have not one co-host, and our regular one isn't here. I have three co-hosts. First up, we have Mr. Chuck Hensey. How you doing this evening, Chuck?
Doing great. Good to see everyone.
We got my normal Tuesday co-host down here. We have Steve, the Voice White. How you doing tonight, Steve?
G'day, eh? It's the voice.
And of course, my new
here's the abnormal co-host,
right? And my new streaming bestie, apparently, Anachronic Comics or whatever. He's down there in that other corner.
That guy.
But it's not about any of us this evening. Tonight, making his 10-1-1 debut, and he'll be on again at the end of July. But we'll announce that show a different time and what that's going to entail. It's going to be a first of its kind. But this evening is none other than Mr. Dave Bratton himself. Dave, welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, how are you guys?
We are doing well, and we're happy to have you on.
The inaugural.
Right. His first shout out. So before we get going, first thing I'll ask you is how hard was it getting your books down to 12?
Yeah, it was tricky. I mean, this could have been like the 31-1, and it would have been a lot, little bit easier. Yeah, but you know what? It was fun. I noticed on Tuesday some loopholes, so I'm gonna try and leverage as many of those as possible.
You sure you didn't talk to Joe about loopholes?
Oh yeah, lawyer. Yeah, so I figured the lawyer knows his loopholes. So
right.
Yeah.
You didn't watch my show, did you? It was like
I did.
It was a 22-5-3 or something like that.
I didn't get to see all of it, but I did watch a bunch of it. Yes.
Now, what we usually do is we'll have the guest give the quick 2 minutes who you are, what your social medias are about. But first, I'd like to comment on one of the best things I like about your background is Christopher Reeve is always over your shoulder.
He is. So that's
he's my childhood right there, a huge part of it.
Same. Yeah, that's that as much as I liked Superman, and we'll get into that a little bit, that portrayal cemented, my love for the character. So
that, and also just one of the more you learned about the guy, the nicer and nicer of a person he was, and it just made you like him even more.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. Some of the things that he did, even prior, he became such an advocate for people who'd been paralyzed. But prior to that, he'd done some really remarkable and frankly heroic things. So yeah, the more you read about Christopher Reeve, the bigger a fan you're more likely to become.
Definitely. But let's get to 2 minutes on you. So you have a YouTube channel called Action Figure Comedy and an Instagram called Action Figure Comedy. Speak about that for 2 minutes. We'll say hi to the crowd, then we'll come back to you for your first book.
That sounds good. So
someone's naughty.
My daughter was accidentally FaceTiming me, it appears. Sorry. He's right upstairs too. So yeah, I started a YouTube channel, my goodness, let's say 2016, 2017, quite some time ago, called Action Figure Comedy. I've been producing videos for a very long time. I started in the early 2000s. The first thing I ever did, I had worked at an after-school program in the 90s and shot a 27-minute film with them. And I recommend if you're going to learn how to video edit, don't do it on a 27-minute film. No. So because of that, I got interested in it. I was into it. Doug had been doing some really cool comedy stuff with his pop culture shock therapy. And at one point, I just decided, you know what? I need a creative outlet. So I'm going to create comedy shorts using my action figures. Film is such a collaborative medium, and I'm like, it's just me. So it'll be me with the action figures. I'll do all the voice work. I'll do the filming, the editing, all of it. So I think they're over 100 up on the channel. If you ever want to check them out,
they're all terrific. If you haven't gone there, you got to watch them. You'll be laughing.
Oh yeah,
like
they're great.
Fantastic stuff. And your voice work is just amazing. I mean, amazing voice work. You got to go check it out, guys. It's just fantastic.
Thank you.
And the link is in the description below to his YouTube and his Instagram.
Yeah, and the Instagram, it's just, that was more of a pandemic thing. I was only promoting via Facebook, and then during that time getting to be a part of the comic community. I'm like, they all seem to be on Instagram. I might need to do that too. So that's how that happened. So yeah, that's me with that. And obviously kind of a giant superhero fan. There are other things I like. We're gonna get into some of those tonight. So I'm excited about this whole thing.
Nice. Well, it'll be fun. All right, let's go say hi to our chat. So first in, as always, we have Las Cruces. James, good evening, sir. Nice to see you. Second, one of my all-time favorite people, Mr. Jerry the Jitterbug. How you doing tonight, Jerry?
Hey.
We have Joe and Steve saying hi to everybody. And Yamil Hernandez, great to see you. Thank you for stopping in.
Thank you for being here.
And we have Switch Comics. Marco, good to see you. Brad, great to see you. She really wants to FaceTime.
She does.
We have the Jackson Roy Kirk.
Drunk again.
The other cool Bratton brother.
Talking about me.
Right. Phil's Treehouse. Good evening, Phil. Great to see you. And why do sharks not attack lawyers? Uh-oh.
Yeah, I know the lawyer jokes are already coming out.
That's an old one, Jerry. That's an old one.
That's usual every time. And then Jerry's the punchline is professional courtesy. Oh goodness, Jerry must be hitting the bottle tonight. He agrees that Superman is the 78 is the best superhero movie ever made.
Certainly the most important. Certainly, no doubt.
And and Jerry just subscribed to you.
Yep.
Mr. Mark Andrews, how you doing tonight, Mark? Great to see you.
Mr. Andrews.
Dope
Oh,
Comics.
really, Mark? A Marvel book, huh?
Oh, my brother.
How you doing, Dope? Great to see you, buddy. And we got Doug texting and driving. Don't do that, Doug. We'll still be here on the rewind.
Excellent.
I'm sure he was stopped when he did that, but just busting on him a little bit.
Yeah, he was at a light, sure.
And JC Carter, good evening. Nice to see you. Thank you for stopping in. So, well, I'll keep doing the professional tip of the hat to the people as they pop in. But right now, we're going back to you. It's all about you, Dave. So start us out with your first book and talk as much as you need to. We'll go on some tangents. We'll have some fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So, to the best of my recollection, this is the comic that I remember being the first comic I ever got. I may have had others before. I don't know. But this, in my memory, this is the one. And this, hi, Mom. This is the one my dad got me when I turned 6 years old. And this is Superman 317. This is not the actual copy. I think that was lost to time. I was only 6. But I never forgot this cover. And so anytime that it truly is, it's incredibly powerful. Neil Adams, one of the, on the Mount Rushmore of comic book artists. So my dad bought this for me. I just love that cover. The comic book itself, nothing special, but the cover is unbelievable. So this always stuck with me. And years later, I remembered it and I saw it and I'm like, I'm buying that. Yeah. And so when I go into store and I see it, I still think I'm buying that. And I do buy it. So I've got several copies. I love it.
And we all have those books, right? When you see them, you grab them. It doesn't matter how many you have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, so this is the comic I think of when I think of comics. And this might be my all-time favorite. Certainly my all-time favorite cover. I mean, Superman, this was early. I was aware of Superman. This was a piece of that puzzle and becoming a massive Superman fan.
He's looking a little green around the gills there.
You know what? My understanding was that Neil Adams created this, but it was not supposed to be a cover. Right. And DC loved the art so much. They're like, we're going to make it one. We're going to make him saying things to like sort of fit the story. Right. The main thing is this image.
Right.
That's my understanding. That might be apocryphal. I could be wrong. But that was my understanding of how this cover came to be.
Yeah, I heard the same thing. They basically shoehorned it in because they liked it so much and made it apply to the story. Yeah.
Right. It's so spectacular. Like you can't look at that cover and not want to see what's inside the book.
Absolutely.
Right.
You're like,
Well, most of his covers, they tried him out on Superman, Neil Adams, because every cover he made, the particular books, the sale of the books went up that particular month. So they made him do a Superman one. I forget which one it was. I don't think it was
Okay.
that one, but he did do one. And sure enough, the sales went up because it was his cover. So he
Yeah.
had that magic there with the
Absolutely.
covers, and that's a fantastic one.
Yeah, it really is. It
You
really
got
is.
Art picking on you a little bit there, Dave.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because in the last 10 to 20 years, sort of the angry, glowing, visionized Supermans kind of become a cover staple. Like people are like, yeah, you know, badass Superman. And I'm like, this is 1977, guys. And I think this is way cooler. So
Oh, yeah, that's well, you know, it's funny because knowing you were going to be on tonight too, there was something I wanted to ask you about a certain era of Superman covers.
okay.
And that is like the Silver Age Superman being a jerk on the cover.
Uh,
Where he's like being mean to Lois or someone else or doing
Yeah.
something that
Yeah, that's right.
those are hilarious. There's some great, you know, I think there was a website that it was called, I don't know, Superman being a word I won't say if this is a family show, but
Right.
it was
An
hilarious.
a-hole.
Right.
But yet, Gary,
Yeah.
to us young guys there, it was all fantastic. You know, it was great.
well, they're hilarious. I mean, you have Batman ones too, but the Superman ones that were done so well. They were just
You've got that Batman slapping Robin
Yep.
thing that shows up
Yeah.
every time, but Superman being a jerk to Jimmy, being a jerk to Lois, being a jerk to Lana, being a jerk to everybody. It's kind of strange and kind of hilarious now. So.
Yep.
well.
That's
That I
it,
mean,
Jerry. You got it, Jerry. I wasn't
And
going to
there's-
say it. I don't
and
know
there's
what I'm
people
allowed
that
to
just
say or not
collect
say.
that in itself.
Yeah.
It's got its own subcategory of collectors.
Yeah. No, it's fun. So this is my first one. This is, like I said, one of my all-time favorite covers, you know, all-time favorite character. So, and this is, I'm sneaking in the loophole, an honorable mention adjacent to it.
Oh,
because
yeah, there you
my
go.
father gave me this. My grandparents got me this.
Oh,
That's a great
nice.
one.
This is just a really cool kind. It's totally beat up. I don't care.
Oh yeah.
And it actually is a first appearance of a major name for a character. If someone wants to put that in the comments, maybe I'll send something your way. We'll see. But
Contest.
this is you know, my grandparents bought me for that, so I wanted to attach that to this one. So the next comic I have, this is the
Kind of neat. Kind of neat.
Kind of neat. Yeah.
kind of neat.
Yeah.
This is the comic I think of when I think of, I remember this day. So
Ooh.
Doug actually showed this comic when he was on the show several months ago. I'm gonna show the same one. Doug credits me because we went to a place called Bob's Kitten Caboodle in Rockaway, New Jersey, because I wanted to buy comic books. Like I was gonna start collecting. And Doug kind of tagged along with me and my dad, and he grabbed the same comic. And since I was 9, I did what any good 9-year-old big brother would do. He's copying me, you know, and got all bent out of shape, and you know, so we both ended up getting it, even though that kind of ticked me off at the time.
Right? Why can't he just be himself?
Yeah, but this is when I decided I wanted to collect. I walked into the store, I saw this comic, and I think we had like some beaten up Teen Titans comic that we'd read a long time ago. I'm like, oh, Teen Titans, you know, I remember liking that comic. This one looks cool. And the thing was, I think I thought it was #1. It's annual #1, but I didn't know the difference. I mean, I remember I thought DC Comics Presents 9 or 12 was like Superman 9 or 12. I'm like, I've got a book that's worth thousands of dollars. You don't, Dave.
No, you
don't. But this is one of, and I bought a couple others. Firestorm #7 was one that easily could have made this show. But because, I mean, the Wolfman Perez run on this comic was just so phenomenal and ahead of its time, and gorgeous artwork, really personal and emotional storytelling in a way that most, yes, Hector Ortiz, you got it. It is Nightwing. It just, to me, this took a leap forward in the comics that I was reading to get that kind of storytelling, the gorgeous art. You know, George Perez is probably my all-time favorite comic book artist. There are others though that are in that mix, and we'll talk about some of them in this show. But I walked in, I'm like, I'm buying some comics because I want to collect comics. And Doug has sort of credited me with collecting because of that decision I made. But at the same time, part of the reason I made that decision is when we spend time with our grandparents, they had coins, they had stamps, and I found it a little interesting, but not super interesting. And Doug said, you know, I collect these. So I'm like, well, if Doug's collecting something, I need to collect something.
Mhm.
I love comics.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. So that sort of started it for me and Doug. And it's an unbelievable run for anyone who hasn't read the Wolfman and Perez books. They're available in trade paperback. You know, actually my favorite way to read comics. I highly recommend them. You know, they're fantastic. So
You get your money's worth with Perez books too, because there's a lot of dialogue in those things.
oh my goodness. Oh my
Like
goodness.
sit down, like reading one comic book's going to take a little while.
Yeah. And when I got back into comic collecting later, I was sort of shocked that I could read a comic book in 5 minutes. You know? and in the old days, it'd take 20 or 30 or whatever, because there was so much narration, so much dialogue, and
Right. Especially if you're reading Roy Thomas or Stan Lee, right?
Mhm.
a lot.
Or even Bill Mantlo. Bill Mantlo, just that whole ROM run, amazing that he wrote.
Okay. I have not read that, so that's good to know. Yeah. Now my
Yeah,
third
don't mention Marvel licenses. You get thrown off. It's okay. So
But you go back to DC. Come
Yeah.
on, back to
So-
DC. It's all right.
my third book. My third book. Now, all right, for me, there's the big three, my favorite characters, and I have others as well that are pretty close. And in that, Superman, I consider my all-time favorite, but Batman is in that trifecta.
Wow.
And the reason I chose this comic, this is Detective Comics 526, Batman's 500th appearance in Detective Comics. But there are a couple reasons I chose this. One, Don Newton did the art. And if there's anything I want to be, it's an advocate for Don Newton's artwork. He was unbelievable. And Gary, I sent you a few stills of his art earlier. If you don't mind putting, you know,
Not at all.
thank you.
And I'll let you talk us through these.
Sure. But you know, this was one of the Batman covers he did. It's just gorgeous.
That's awesome.
And he didn't get to do a lot of covers, and that always kind of bothered him a little bit. His artwork is unbelievable. The reason I feel that he's not as well known. Oh, there's Batman fighting. It looks like Batman fighting Batman. It's Batman fighting Hugo Strange in a Batman costume. Hugo Strange is going to murder.
And that is
his
to
identity.
this day still my favorite Batman costume.
Oh yeah, no, it's and the way he drew it. And this is actually the reason I included this. It's a page from this book, and the reason this book it's more than that. It's the final issue of, and this is where I'm going to struggle with the name. It's either Gary or Jerry Conway, his run on the Batman books. And it's a great run. If you are going to do a Batman TV show or streaming series, you could do a lot worse than take inspiration from his few-year run. And it culminated in this book, and it's Batman versus everybody. And it's fantastic.
Wow.
Great story. All his rogues gallery. It's a great story, gorgeous artwork. You know, Don Newton's stuff is phenomenal. He died young, unfortunately, and I think that's why most people are unfamiliar with him. I actually, Joe, this is going to sound like blasphemy, and it's going to sound strange given my first book. I prefer his Batman work to Neil Adams' Batman's work, and I love Neil Adams' Batman work.
It's different, but I have to agree with you. I thought he really had a style that fit Batman. I love his Batman.
Yeah,
you know?
It was unbelievable. And to this day, you know, Christopher Reeve is my Superman. And people say, well, a lot of guys have played Batman. Who's your Batman? And I say, it's Don Newton's Batman. Like, he's who I think of when I see Batman. So, you know, I appreciate the movie and television versions, but this is what I think of when I think of Batman. So if you're unfamiliar with Don Newton's artwork, please, you know, throw it in Google, buy some books. I actually made it my mission. This is more like a pandemic thing. I wanted to buy every superhero comic he ever penciled. And
Don Newton had a really good run at the end of the Phantom series for Charlton.
He did.
The last 7 or 8 issues. He also did the covers for those too.
They're gorgeous and they're painted.
Yeah,
they're beautiful.
They are amazing.
And he did some, people who've seen me on other shows know I'm a fan of the character Captain Marvel Shazam. he did a bunch of backup stories for that character in World's Finest Comics, and the artwork is stunning. So that's why, and this is another book. If I see it and I'm cool with the price, I snag it. You know, I like picking this up. I think it's, in my opinion, this is one of the best Batman comics.
I know. I might grab that now too, that you gave us all this history about. And seeing that inside art's amazing. That art is spectacular.
It's truly incredible. And this one, for me, an older guy, I guess, that it was a different version of Jason Todd. You know, his original origin was he was an acrobat like Dick Grayson, and his parents were acrobats. And I don't want to spoil everything, but it was more similar to Dick Grayson's origin. So Jason Todd started out as a different character, and this is where he kind of, you know, it's not his debut, but it's sort of his help out Batman debut. So
nice.
It's just a really cool comic.
And you're talking about like, that's your Batman. My Batman, because this is what imprinted on me as a kid, was old Brave and the Bold Batmans with that costume.
Jim Aparo?
It might be. I was young. I didn't know. I didn't really keep track of the artist then.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But that costume, I've always loved it. It's always, no matter what iteration of Batman we've gotten, nothing's ever beat that gray and blue and yellow costume for me.
No, that's, I hear you. That's what I grew up with too. I mean, I think about it now and I'm like, it's just cloth. I mean, body armor makes a lot more sense, but it's
right.
cooler. So,
well, you know, when I close my eyes and think of Batman, I think of that costume.
Yeah,
that's the first thing that pops up.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, no, there are tons of great Batman artists out there. Don Newton's is probably my favorite, and I actually had a conversation with Neil Adam once where I sort of told him that. I let him know that Don Newton was also.
Wow, you took your life in your hand.
And I love Don Newton's.
Them's his fighting words, eh?
He wouldn't be above jumping over the table at you.
I had a great interaction with him, honestly, because at one point he was sort of, I don't know how to describe it. He was sort of bloviating a little bit and kind of said something like, well, I'm the guy, right? And because I'm me, I'm like, well,
nope.
You're one of them. And I said that. I'm like, you're one of them. And he just got the smile on his face, like, you know, this guy's taking this out of me, but not being a jerk about it.
No, but he was nice. I mean, he was.
Oh, he was great.
He had this tough,
great
persona. But you're right. He would smile, because I talked to him quite a bit at New York Comic Con.
Yeah.
You know, and felt really bad when he didn't make, during COVID, he decided not to go. And then unfortunately he passed. Yeah. So I never got to talk to him again. But he was great, a great person to talk to. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely, I cherished that interaction because it was so positive and it was so fun. And, you know, and I got a couple things. I bought a couple things, and that always is great for the interaction too. And I've got some cool signed Neil Adams stuff, and he was a great guy to talk to. So, but I let him know, hey, I love your Batman. I also love Don Newton's, and he knew who he was. He remembered him, which was kind of cool. So, yeah.
Well, so you got to figure these artists are familiar with all the people that preceded them or worked with, like, the same time period as them when they crossed over too.
Right. And I will always have immense respect for Neil Adams for making sure that eventually DC did right by Siegel and Schuster, the creators of Superman, when they were basically destitute, and he went to bat for them and got them a pension, and he took that lead, and what a remarkable thing to do, you know? So, so sticking with the Batman theme, if we can.
Yep.
This is number 4.
Yes, sir.
This one, I mean, everybody's familiar with this. I remember very clearly picking this up. And the funny thing about this book, I've read it, but I've never read this copy. This has never been opened. Nice. The reason it wasn't is because I bought this, and then I bought a second print to read. And my brother's like, why don't you just buy another first print to read? I'm like, no. This is cool. I'll crack open a first print. I will crack open a second print.
Right.
Colossally stupid. Doug was right. I should have listened to my brother. But, you know, this is, and when I read this book, it just sort of, I mean, honestly, it was strange because it was so different. It was done in such a different style with the tiny little panels, like the newscaster panels. It was so strange, so different. and it was such, what we think of now as sort of a grown-up book, and it was a totally different kind of Batman story. The funny thing now, though, when I look at it and they drew like an older Bruce Wayne, I'm like, oh yeah, he's old, he's 50. I'm like, yeah, that's my rearview mirror.
Yeah, then once you hit 50, it's not so old anymore, is it?
You're like, well, no, he's still young. He can still be Batman.
Yeah, he's still
Yeah,
good.
so,
Yeah.
but this
Still
book
do
is,
stuff.
I mean, I could sit here and sing its praises. I think everyone knows how incredible and how important this book is. And
you may have even homaged it.
That's where I was going. This
Damn,
book
I
is
thought
also
for a
special.
second that it was you were pulling up a different book when I looked at it. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So did I.
This book is also special to me because of the opportunity I had to homage it
There it is.
for Isolation, to work with, my brother again. And I say again, you'll understand what I mean later in the show. But the fact that I got to do this, and Mark Andrews, just for you, buddy, this is a double DC homage. This pose is the same pose Superman has on Superman #1. It's just flopped. So it's a double DC homage. And I didn't do all of this. Adam Shermer did the fantastic color work, the design, and if you can't see it on here, but there's like a rain texture to it that, it's really nice. I like to think that we, for Isolation, created. There have been a number of homages to this book. I'd like to think that ours is one of the better ones. Maybe I
like the red. The red pops.
It really does.
That was a decision I made, because I'm like, every other homage, there are 3 elements. There's a silhouette, there's a lightning, blue background.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, we can change the background color and it'll still be obvious that it's an homage. Right. So I'm like, let's make it red.
Superman red.
Actually kind of Reggie red, but no, I just thought really it was blood red because of the content of the book, what this book was about. And I'm really proud of this, and I'm thrilled that I got to do this for Doug's comic, and Adam did an unbelievable job. It was a team effort. And that's another reason why Dark Knight #1. I mean, I love it for a zillion other reasons. This is just another one, So Loophole, another book, Loophole, still on book 4.
I wasn't going to call you out on it. I was going to let it slide, but
I have 75 books. No.
Right.
And the 40 books in this Loophole category.
So you brought a quarter of what Joe usually brings.
Exactly. I was good. I can't match Joe. So this next book I wanted to bring, it has a lot of meaning to me. In my trifecta, the other character is Spider-Man. Superman, Batman, Spider-Man.
Oh, nice.
Parker, Spectacular Spider-Man #1. And part of the reason this book is important to me is Doug bought it for me, I believe, as a birthday gift when we were kids.
Aww.
And, and that's, hopefully people are seeing that theme. Not only do I love these books, not only do I love these characters, I love the people who gave them to me and who I got to share them with. So this book is really cool. I'm actually surprised it's not a bigger book in some ways. The funny thing about this is once he got this for me, there you go, Mark. Threw you a bone, buddy.
The only one in the collection.
But I do own several boxes of Marvel comics, Mark, just so you know.
There you go.
An underrated villain, I thought, and they did him dirty the way they killed him off.
Who's that? I'm sorry.
The tarantula?
Oh, I don't even... Did they kill him off? I didn't even realize it.
See, he doesn't read the Marvels, Mark.
No, I do. I've literally read... I mean, I probably have... I've lost track of how many Spider-Man trade paperbacks I have.
Right.
So I've pretty much read, not all the comics, but most of the Spider-Man comics since the early 2000s, since the JMS run. Like, I think I've just about read them all. So I've read hundreds and hundreds of Spider-Man comics. I loved Mark Slott's run. There you go, Mark. Mark Slott's run was amazing. Tons of Spider-Man comics. This will not be the only Spider-Man comic that pops up tonight. I won't tell you if it's a loophole or not. But
Dave, that book was highly speculated on in, I think it was 76 or 77 when it came out.
Okay.
Because that was just as the collecting market was really starting to take off.
That makes sense.
Because the same problem is there. I know you've got one somewhere in your collection, which Shazam 1 had the exact same problem.
Yeah.
because everybody was buying it all up.
Number one.
Because it was the Shazam one. And here you had your first Spider-Man one since
that was a big deal.
Marvel team up. So
yeah.
And Spectacular Spider-Man and Web of Spider-Man were so underrated. Everybody always loved Amazing, but I was reading all three, and I thought Web and Spectacular had some great stories that I like better than some of the Amazing stories. I thought they were both so good.
I agree. I was collecting all three series. I was actually upset when they changed the titles to all match Amazing Spider-Man. I like that they had their own unique titling, trade dress. I loved that. And the funny thing, when I got this book, then I made sure to buy every Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man every month. And I cut back on some of the Amazing Spider-Mans because I was buying this one. I was still buying it just inconsistently. The amount of money that decision cost me, because every Amazing Spider-Man book from that book, $20, $40, $100, So no, but I had a bunch of those, and this is a great book. It's
those
number one for Spider-Man,
right? Yeah. And Spectacular Web are starting to go up in price now.
Yeah, and I had all the webs too. I still have most of them, but this was an important book, and I really appreciated Doug getting this for me. It was so cool. He's gotten he's purchased some really cool comics for me over the years, and this is up there. So I believe that was number 5.
Yes, sir.
So this is where we depart from the genre a bit, and this is one of my all-time favorites to read for the story, which is remarkable, for the art, which is phenomenal. And this is not how I was introduced to the book, but this is one I picked up.
Nice.
And this is the first Elf Quest. I think I bought this over 20 years ago. And this is how far ahead of the curve my brother was. In like the late 90s, early 2000s, Doug was like, hey, I heard they're going to make an Elf Quest TV show. You should buy that comic because it'll probably go up in value. So he knew all about the movie spec at least 10 to 15 years before it became a consistent thing. So, or at least that's how I think of it. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But this comic, I made sure to pick one up. I was introduced through it. Yeah, Mark, we're together 100% on that. It's an incredible series. The artwork is amazing. And Gary, if you don't mind pulling up some of that, that's cover 17. And if you're able to blow that thing up, and you can minimize me, it's totally fine. That cover is astonishing. And if you can't, that's fine. It's astonishing. It's unbelievable. The art is phenomenal. Oh, there we go.
There it is.
That's
nice.
It's amazing. And the way Doug and I came to these books, when we would go visit our grandparents, another piece, it was also very like anime inspired and
was this the Wendy Pini art?
Wendy Pini.
Yeah.
She is, you know what? Sometimes when I list my favorite artists, because I'm so focused on superhero comics, I occasionally forget her. And then I kick myself really hard because I'm like, she's amazing. She's unbelievable. Her work is second to none. And
she modeled Red Sonja for a while.
She did.
Yep.
Yeah. But this is how we came to the books. We go visit our grandparents, and a friend of ours who is a little bit older than us, I think, by the name of Paul Deffenbaugh. We just recently reconnected with him via social media, which is really cool. He introduced us to these Fantagraphic graphic novels. And this was a great way to read the story because the colors were gorgeous. The original comics were black and white. And you could get the whole story in 4 volumes. And like I said, even to this day, trade paperbacks are my favorite way to read these things.
I like Fantagraphics. I'm a fan of them.
Yeah, they're truly amazing. The art's incredible. And the storytelling was so different. It's not, and I'm not trying to knock superhero comics because I love them, but it's not people in tights fighting. You know what I mean?
Something fresh.
It's more grown up. It was about change and identity and discovering your origins and finding your people and priorities and jealousy and love and like war, but not in a glorified way. It's just amazing. It was a more adult book. I mean, at one point in one of the final books, the elves are going to war, and they know that not all of them are going to make it through. And so the night before, they get together for an activity. I'll leave it at that. They get together to get together. And I'm like, Super Friends never did that before Fighting Legion of Doom, you know, like, so, you know, it was a more grown-up comic, and I recently reread it because it was kind of on my mind, some discussions about it. Doug has like the original run, and actually I picked up basically all of it, not in first print, but not after he gave a bunch to Milt. I was like, what? I would have taken them. So, but Doug gave me some and got me started. It was pretty funny. But it's such a good series, and it is unlike anything you've ever read in comics. It's fantasy, but it doesn't feel like expected or cliche fantasy, you know. And not to knock it. They're not searching, and not to knock Lord of the Rings, they're not searching for the Ring of Power. They're not searching for the magic sword.
No,
they're
it's got a good story.
for something much more meaningful and deeper than that. It's not the MacGuffin. I mean, I guess it could be considered
right.
that.
So it's a low fantasy story, not a high fantasy where everyone's meeting on the same quest.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
some of them are, and there is something that does bring them together, but it's something so completely, it was mind-blowing to me when I read it. So completely unexpected. It takes a turn that you don't see coming, and it was just like, oh, wow, okay, wow. So that first 20 issues, whether it's trade paperback, whether the original comics, if you're a fan of comics and you love great storytelling, I highly recommend checking it out. You know, it's incredible. So, yeah,
I might have to put that on my list to look up.
Okay.
And Gary, the initial books from Warp, unless you get some of the reprints, are all magazine sized.
They are.
That's the other one. Yeah,
they are. Yeah. So, all right, that takes us to what is it, 6 now?
Number 7.
Oh, 7. All right, I've lost track. All right. So this, as I've mentioned, Superman is my favorite. And when I was reading a lot of these other comics, especially like the New Teen Titans, comics of that level of quality, a lot of the Superman comics at the time didn't really reach that, you know. So I was buying Superman intermittently, and then I kind of stopped, even though he's, you know, really my favorite superhero. But the comics I didn't feel were as interesting as some of the other stuff. And I was a kid. I was on an allowance budget. And
Right.
75 cents.
I got to stretch it.
A couple bucks a week. And I'm like, well, I can only buy a few comics. So what's it going to be? If I'm not enjoying something, I can't buy it. This changed that for me. When John Byrne took over,
nice.
When he started his run of Man of Steel, that made Superman. It was actually, it felt inspired by Superman the movie. It had a little bit more of that vibe.
It did.
Yeah. And Wolfman actually was very instrumental in some of the decisions that were made. He's the one who decided to make Lex Luthor sort of the evil billionaire businessman.
Yeah. It was interesting what he did with them.
Yeah, kind of holds up today. But
first variant.
You know, so this comic, you know, it jump-started not my love for Superman, but my love for Superman comics again. So this meant a lot, you know, and from that perspective. And as Doug asked, yes, I believe this is the first variant cover ever. So,
and with the old S on it.
What's that?
The old S on it.
Yeah, you know, and to me this looked new because Kurt Swan's was very rounded, and not knocking Kurt Swan's art. He was a phenomenal artist, but this was so big and angular, and you know, I just loved it. Yeah, no, this is to the original S, but it looked different than how it was being drawn at the time. And I just loved how big and bold that emblem was on his chest, you know. So this one was an important one to me. Going back, Mark Andrews, to Marvel Fair for a moment. So really, when I think of my collecting days, it truly was like 80 or 81 to about 88. And my collection, I could tell when it ended. You know, by that time I was a junior in high school. You know, my life was changing. I was working, getting ready for college. You know, I'd been into comics, learned to draw because of comics. But I was moving away from it for a time. That didn't take very long, but at one point it did. And the last comic in my collection was Amazing Spider-Man 301, which meant that right before that, I had Amazing Spider-Man 300. And I know everybody's really huge books. They love Venom. I don't care much about Venom. It's I think
me either.
it's you know, hey, everybody has their own things. I'm not a Venom guy. I just thought it was cool. The interesting thing about this, though, I sent this in to be graded, and that's a pretty high grade.
That's nice.
I'd never heard of cleaning and pressing. I just sent it in. I pulled it from my box, sent it in.
Oh, so you haven't even cleaned and pressed it.
This got a 9.6 without a clean and a press.
It could be a 9.9. That's a 9.9 or a 10.
Who knows? Who knows? I
Do
don't know.
it. Do it. Do it. Do
I
it.
crack it. I get it back to crack. Joe. So yeah,
CPR.
So we'll have to see. It's always a temptation given the high grade.
Right.
Hey, they're giving away 9.9s for free right now, man. So do it. This is the golden age to do that now, man.
Yeah. So I just thought. So go ahead.
Oh, and it makes no sense, the difference in prices between 9.6s and 9.8s.
I know.
It's almost virtually indiscernible, and the jump in prices is insane.
Yeah, it is. It truly is. So, and as a huge Spider-Man fan, because I really am, it's a cool book to have. And I actually had a bunch of other big Spider-Man books. Over the years, I moved on from some of them. I actually did the unthinkable and sold them. I had some big ones too.
You're not the only one. I had a bunch.
happens.
I had that whole McFarlane run, and I didn't just have it. I had like 4 or 5 copies of each because I'm a multi-copy buyer, and I was moving a lot at that time. I was young, and I'm like, I'm tired of moving these around, and sold them all. And I'm like, I shouldn't have done that.
For me, it came down to Doug and I were both doing this. We're like, you know what? We have to move on from all of these someday. So let's start selling them now. And especially like around that time frame, pre-pandemic and during the pandemic, we're like, now's the time. And I mean, what if I told you what I sold some of these for, you would cry because you're like, that's all you got, Dave. And I'm like, you know what? This comic I paid 75 cents for.
You still made your money.
Anything's a profit.
Exactly. I still did fine, and someone got an amazing deal, and that's okay.
Give you $3 for it, and then you're doing good.
But you know what, Dave, though, and I talk about it a lot. That's where some comic shops end up going out of business to shoot themselves in the foot.
They do.
They get obsessed with fair market value when they paid $1 to $2 for most of these major keys when they buy a whole collection.
Yeah.
And they won't budge. And it's like, well, you're still making a couple hundred if you sell it for this price.
Exactly.
But they won't do it. But then, if you don't ever sell it, you don't make any money.
That's
exactly.
Right.
I was going to say that in my head. If you try to make top dollar, oftentimes you make no dollars. So, that's what we were doing. And I love Spider-Man, so he's part of my big 3. This next. Go ahead.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Favorite Spider-Man artist ever?
Oh,
I mean, for me, it's always going to be John Romita Sr.
To me, he's the most iconic. He's the one I associate with character more than Ditko. And I know that's probably blasphemy to hardcore fans, but when I think of Peter Parker, I think of John Romita's. I actually loved John Romita Jr.'s work in the 80s and then in the 2000s. I really liked the JMS run, or at least the beginning of it. It kind of veered off the rails, in my opinion, towards the end. But I liked his son's work as well. There are a couple others and guys I can't even remember their names. There's one. How is it?
I liked his son's work on Contest of Champions before he went blocky.
Oh, okay.
I don't like his blocky work.
Romita Jr., I think he's great for Spider-Man and some characters, and others I just don't feel the style fits, but that's just my opinion. It's irrelevant. It's my taste, and taste is individual. There's another one that I'm thinking of. He did some work during Dan Slott's run, and because that's more recent, as I can list names of artists and inkers from books when I was like 11 and 12 years old. Now a guy I read 8 years ago, I'm like, I have no clue. So age does that to you. Christ on Infinite Earths. I was talking to Doug. That book could have easily made this list. I'm like, yeah, Mike DiCarlo inked the first George Perez book, and then Giordano did some, and then Ordway came in, and I really thought Ordway was the right guy for that, his work on that book. So the newer guys, I'll have to look it up. As far as a favorite artist, Romita, I don't know if he's my favorite Romita Senior, but he is the guy I think of when I think of Spider-Man. So his work was unbelievable.
And I was also a big fan of Eric Larson. And he's a very like it or hate it style
Yeah,
guy, but
yeah, he didn't do it for me. Like McFarlane, even then I was like, it's cool, it's neat, you know, it's different. And I love the way he drew Spider-Man at the time, although I've kind of come back like from the Giant Eyes and all of that. But McFarlane, I liked his work at that point. But yeah, I don't consider him one of my favorites.
And Bagley, although he's got a simpler style. I love Bagley's simple, clean cut
style. You know what? Thank you.
Good.
Bagley is one of my favorites on the character. I think, you know, he draws that character in a way it's fresh and it's really cool. I liked him on Amazing Spider-Man. I think he was in the 90s. I liked his stuff then.
Fantastic.
I loved his Ultimate Spider-Man stuff. So Bagley's a great Spider-Man artist. I actually am a big fan. There's another artist.
He's actually my number 2 after Romita Sr.
Okay. Yeah, he's a great choice. There's another artist I really like his work that did some Spider-Man comics. He's not known for Spider-Man, but I just love his work. His name's Mike McCone. I just think he's a great artist, and I love almost everything he does, no matter what company, no matter what character. So
and then you got some people like Sal Buscema who have like 2 very different runs on Spider-Man, where you've got the early Sal, where he's very
Sal's was great too.
Silver, Bronze Age, and then you've got his later Spectacular Spider-Man run where people either love it or hate it.
And Sal inked by Keith Williams is my favorite with those. He's my favorite inker for Sal Buscema is Keith Williams.
Okay. Gotcha.
Just like with John Buscema and Conan, my favorite inker is Ernie Chan.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I
inker had such a style. It doesn't matter what Ernie inked. You knew who it was.
Yeah, agreed. There's certain inkers where you see it. And it's funny because I was saying, you know, that DeCarlo's style, it didn't work for me on Perez, but it worked for me on Jurgens when he did Booster Gold. I thought it was great on that. You know, it kind of depends who the penciler is and how that meshes.
Yeah, and this is another top 5 Spidey artist for me too, Ross Andrew.
He did a lot of DC covers. Back in the day. He kind of became, it felt like Neil Adams, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, then Ross Andrew. So if memory serves, and it may not, there are a lot of comics, and it's been it's been a long time. So this next book, I actually have a pre-visual for it. I've talked about some of my artists, my favorite artists, and this next cover is by one of my favorite artists. And this pre-visual, in 2002, I got engaged to my wife. She got the engagement ring, and I got the Alex Ross. So
nice.
I bought her an engagement ring. She bought me an original Alex Ross sketch, double sketch of Superman.
He understood the assignment.
And you know what? She hit it out of the park. Not surprising. Not surprising. I mean, some of the original art I have, she picked up for me. I mean, I kind of guided her, but I've got some, I don't have much, but I've got some really awesome pages, including John Byrne, Man of Steel. But this is so cool that she got this for me when we were engaged. Such a neat thing for her to do. So credit where credit is due. And this is one of my all-time favorite Alex Ross covers. So as mentioned before,
that one was well done.
I'm a big Shazam, Captain Marvel fan. Black Adam's his ultimate villain. And Alex Ross is one of the truly great artists. And to me, this is one of his truly great covers. You know, there's something about one individual. It's a closer shot. And this is such a dynamic pose with lightning shooting everywhere. I mean, like, how do you beat that? This is incredible.
It's just fantastic.
So, I love it. I love it. So this had to go in there because it was Alex Ross, because it's connected to Shazam. And there's a reason you're not going to see any Shazam comics in this. But there's another reason for this cover. And I think some of you who
Here we go.
know
Here we go.
That I homage this with Adam Shermer again.
Oh, nice.
For Reggie's, the second printing of Reggie's and Doug's Reggie Collects Guide to Smart Comic Collecting. So working with Doug again, you know, and this was the first thing. It wasn't intended to be. I was kind of hoping it might be, but you know, I took it as an A-OK to Reggie. I gave him the original art. I brought Adam, colored it for me. He did an amazing job. He did the digital painting, and I showed it to him. And after the first print sold out from the guide, Reggie's like, I want to do a second print. Maybe this is the cover. I'm like, great. So yeah, no, I mean,
terrific cover.
So if I'm gonna homage anyone, I'm gonna homage people that are iconic legends and far, 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 far better artists than I am. But I'm still pleased with how they came out. So, you know, that's another reason I really wanted to show this book.
Definitely amazing.
Thanks. Believe this is number 10.
Yes.
And the reason for this book, it's a Marvel book, Mark. It shows a different side of my fandom. And I've shown mostly superheroes minus ElfQuest, but I am a massive Star Wars fan. I love Star Wars. You know, I saw that when I was a kid.
There we go.
And the funny thing about this book, I mean, I had the 3-packs, like the 7, 8, and like the Green Rabbit Jacks, and I had those, and I practically read the covers off, and they're in terrible shape. I just read them and reread them because I love Star Wars so much. But the funny story about this book, once again, I owe Doug, but it was an interesting situation. I had just gone to Zap Comics, and I think I'd sold them some of my action figures in bulk, or maybe some trades. I don't remember. They're a wonderful comic book store in New Jersey. New Jersey has a bunch. Zap is unbelievable. There's Dewey's, there's Fat Moose. There are a bunch of others that I'm not mentioning, but you know, I've done a lot with Zap. And I was getting ready to leave, and we were by the front cashier, you know, the register, and we were with the owner, and this comic, not graded, was hanging up on the wall. And Doug says in front of the owner, "Hey Dave, that's Star Wars. You should buy that." Well, now I'm on the hook. I was like, you should. When we've had conversations from now on, it's like, "Hey Dave, you should see this," instead of saying you should buy that in front of the guy. And I'm like, great. now I feel like I have to, or I can't. You
got put on the spot.
I did get put on the spot.
You should have said, "Hey Doug, you should chip in."
Yeah.
Here's the thing. This book was marked down from $15 to $10.
Oh, yeah.
My goodness.
That's a bargain.
Put me on the spot, Doug. I guess I'll buy it. Because at that point, like, there was a point where I was like not buying individual comics. I love reading trades. I was only buying trades, like, for love of reading them. Like, value, I don't care. I want to read the story. I want to see the art. Almost like a very pure love of the medium. You know, I don't need the ads. I don't want to like have to wait 30 days for the rest of the story. I want to read all of it. So, Doug, you do have a good, you should buy that track record. So I picked this up. I think it was cleaned and pressed, if I remember correctly. Sent it in, got a pretty good grade on it. But I love Star Wars. You know, that's at the top of my fandom. Those original films. You know, the original Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back are just amazing.
I think we all have friends like that that'll help us buy stuff.
Now, did you get the treasuries of it too? The 3 treasuries they put out?
No, I do not have those. Did not have those. I think the treasury I did have, though, believe it or not, Buck Rogers.
Oh, there's a cool one.
Awesome treasury.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, everybody trying to capitalize on the Star Wars craze, and I remember reading that, you know, when I was a young kid, and you know, so Buck Rogers was fun, but it's not Star Wars. So that's my 10th book. So the one that I'm thinking, I guess, the speculative book, correct? That's
Correct.
okay to do that one?
Oh no, the personal storybook and then speculation.
Can I save that for last? Is that okay?
You can absolutely.
Yeah,
I just didn't want you to forget it.
What a rebel you are! My
Believe me, there's no way I'll ever forget that one.
Okay.
This one,
let's go with spec.
So, and look, whether it's going to be valuable or not, who cares? This is a cool book, and it's written by a superstar / depending on your viewpoint, legendary writer, drawn by one of the hottest artists in comics now, a current superstar. And it's about a character that's more famous than Superman, Batman, or Spider-Man. Joe, you can't say anything because I know you know the answer. If I asked you, like, who is that? What is that? Do you have a guess?
Flash Gordon.
No.
No. And I don't consider Flash Gordon more well-known than Superman. So, no. And I won't spend here all night trying to make you guys guess.
Doug
If you have a
and I
guess, shout it
were
out. If
talking
not,
about
I'll
this
start.
months and months ago, this particular comic.
I did. It's called Klaus. It's about the origin of Santa Claus by
Oh,
Grant Morrison and Dan Mora. The story's really cool. The art's gorgeous. And Santa Claus is one of the more iconic characters you'll ever think of.
right.
And it's a really different kind of
It's not the Santa Claus you're thinking of. That's
origin.
Hell no, he's got a sword. He's got
not
antlers
the
that he
Santa
ripped
that
off
we all
the
know and
head off
love.
of its deer.
How cool is that? And it's a really cool story. So I'm like, how is this book not like it's got all of those things going for it? How is and it's a 6-issue miniseries with a couple follow-ups.
That's
It's
cool.
just really cool book. So they're trade paperbacks, there's hardcovers, can always order those.
Googling.
It's a cool book. So
Dave, at what point do the Martians show up? So I'm gonna be really disappointed if the Martians don't show up at some point during this.
I think
During
it's
that
issue
story.
7 of this 6-issue miniseries.
Yeah, right.
So
See, I would expect Grant to work them in somehow.
you know what? For a Grant Morrison book, it was a little less Grant Morrison in certain ways. I thought the follow-ups were a little bit more Grant Morrison, heavier on the ideas and maybe not quite as much on the plot. Although I don't know if that's a fair explanation of his work. That's just sometimes how I perceive it. No, I mean, no one can put more ideas in one comic than Grant Morrison.
That's a pretty new book too. 2015 it came out.
Yeah.
It's only $5. You can get it cheap.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Dave told me about it and so forth. We were thinking about whether we could do something with it, which we still might.
Yeah.
But I went out and I bought it, and and he says, "Oh, it's just right after Christmas. I know I'm down in Florida. It's like 80 degrees." I'm going. It doesn't feel right reading this book right now.
What'd you
But it
think,
was
Joe?
good. It was definitely a good book. Definitely a
glad
good
you liked
story.
it. I'm
Yeah.
glad you liked it. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
it's not a
different.
big commitment either. Only 7 issues. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. Not much. So this last book, The Personal Story, there might be 1 or 2 people on the planet who own this book. And one of those people was a defensive end for the New York Giants by the name of George Martin. And this comic is Justice Force #1, created by me and my brother. And we also worked with the series with our friend Carrie Shota. And I wrote this issue. The Justice Force, in no way a complete and total ripoff of the Justice League.
No, of course not.
We have
Justice
Lion
Force.
Right. It's not a league, that's a force.
That's a force to be reckoned with.
Exactly.
Force
Goliath, Lightning Man, Acroman. Surprise, Acroman's an acrobat.
Really?
Let's see who else we've got. Astro Man, Eagle Man, Flame. So the cool thing is, I wrote this, and the villain is let's see if I can find a good picture of him in here.
Is it Doug?
No, the villain, his name is Dr. Paranoid, because I had watched, there he is, Dr. Paranoid. Looks a little like Batman colors, I guess, with an evil mustache. So Dr. Paranoid, I guess I'd seen the movie Tron, and there was a video game in it called Space Paranoids.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what the word paranoid meant, but it sounded kind of like maybe sinister. So I'm like, Dr. Paranoid, that's the villain. And right now, I'm like,
advanced
that is a
degree.
brilliant camp villain name. But I was like 9 or 10. I didn't know any better. So we created Justice Force #1. And an interesting thing about it, I'm going to pull this out. It says Karis Chemical Company. Now, why on earth do I have an envelope from a chemical company? My grandfather worked at Karis Chemical. And when we drew the pencils for this, what he did is he made the photocopies for us.
Oh wow!
Oh, very good.
In that envelope, like Xerox machines were not that commonplace.
Now, what year did you and Doug do this?
Oh gosh,
If you
the
remember.
early 80s. I don't know that we thought to date it. Oh, by the way, here's the original art, every single page. Penciled art. It's BC Comics. In no way a complete and total ripoff of DC Comics. And that was Bratton and Carey, because our friend Carey Shota was working with us on us. He wrote issues 2, 3, and 5. We produced 5 issues of Justice Force. And and I'm telling you, they're all about or over 20 pages in length. Wow. We have enough for a trade paperback of Justice Force. So this is
commitment.
The
Kickstarter.
So these are the original pencils to this comic that we did as children, and as a bonus to show you guys.
It's amazing you still have it all.
And I think we have 2, 3, and 4 somewhere. I hope. I think, but I don't throw that kind of stuff away. So I'm hopefully, yep. Our grandfather is our first publisher. He is alive. He's 100 years old, and he's in Florida. So, that was really cool that he did that for us. That was such a big deal. And as you can see, over the course of a year or so, our artwork improved.
Wow.
Over time. This is Justice Force 5. This was the Justice Force fights like every bad guy we could make up or think of. The Titans of Terror. I wonder where we got that name.
The Titans of Terror.
So,
how many of these did you sell? You got to tell us that.
Oh, so the funny thing is, the first issue.
You forgot.
I mentioned. I don't recall. I think we wanted to sell them, and I don't know if we ever sold many. But I'll never forget this sale. We had colored one. I mean, we hand colored these issues with colored pencils. I mean, talk about a lot of time. And my father was the Protestant chaplain for the New York Giants, and he also worked for other sports teams like the Yankees, the Nets, and the Devils. And so because of that, we were connected with a lot of players from the teams. Doug and I used to babysit their children. And if I remember correctly, George Martin was over at our house. He was a defensive end for the New York Giants. He made some scored a safety in Super Bowl 21. He had an interception return for a touchdown as a defensive end.
Great defensive end
against the Broncos. Right. Yeah, maybe we did. Doug may have a better memory than I do on that. And he saw it, and he said, "I'll give you $5 for that." And our eyes probably went like this, like $5 whole.
Man, you're
oh my gosh, yes. So that's the sale I remember the most. I mean, George Martin is one of the best people you'll ever meet. We read about, superheroes and their good works and their good character. That's who George Martin is. After September 11th, a few years after, he helped raise money for the first responders in 9/11 by walking across the country to raise tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars to help them out with their medical bills. Like he is a Hall of Fame person. Incredible guy. So he's the first person I remember buying our comic book. And, so that to me, like I said, I don't think there are many people on the entire planet who own these, but it's special to me because this is stuff that Doug and I did. It was a collaboration. And in your heads, you're thinking there's idyllic music and a montage of Doug and I like working together and creating this comic. We probably had like near fist fights over some of this stuff,
Star Trek stuff.
Good brotherly stuff, right?
Yeah, brother stuff. But we created 5 issues of Justice Force comics, and I'm excited to get to show it. This might be the first time anyone's ever seen these outside of there'll
never be another one like it on Gary's 1011.
40 years.
Dave,
yeah,
Dave, it looks like an oversized comic. What size is that?
Well, this was, I think, standard paper, 8.5 by 11. We just drew on
it.
Paper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Looks bigger.
If I remember correctly, I could be mistaken, but
it looks like regular paper.
Yeah, we just drew on what we had.
Yeah.
So grab the
pencil.
pencils.
Have you ever thought of reproducing them so you have other copies that you have, so you can kind of like leave the original there or get them out to friends or?
So you know what? that would be a fun project, and that might be something Doug and I do one day. We'll see. I mean, the truth is, these were photocopies of pencils. I still have the pencils,
Right.
but I mean,
what a great thing that would be to hand out at a family reunion, right?
oh yeah, we're talking like penciled artwork. It's incredibly light, and it didn't photocopy all that well. I think
but you
this
can
may be
scan
the
it
only
now.
one we have the originals.
Yeah.
Or
you can scan it in the computer. It'll be perfect.
Yeah, you
yeah,
scan it.
no,
and then
that'll, and we'll
yeah,
probably we'll
ink
have
the
to
scan.
yeah scan it and delete the pencil that's coming through, because some of this stuff we drew on both sides, like a comic book on some of it. I think we started out and we may have realized, hey, we're going to run out of paper if we keep. I don't know. Like, yeah, no, it's on both sides for I think all of it. So we just drew it like it was an actual comic book because we didn't know any better.
Right.
But yeah, so that's the Justice Force. I'm glad I got to share it with you guys. This was kind of
cool.
really special to get to do this on the show and with you guys. So
You know, Dave, you
thanks.
mentioned that to me at some point in time. You know,
okay,
and I think I mentioned to you that I had produced like 3 different comic books
okay,
for a while,
Mhm.
and I wish that I could really find them and that I had them, but
Mhm.
I looked in the box store, I had my old comics, I didn't find anything. And just the other day, I swear, just the other day, I pulled out one of the old comics to look at it, and what fell out was a character sheet where I had one of the character's name was the Unusual Parakeet. So it's not,
Okay.
you know, yeah, he actually looked like Hawkman, but had a parakeet face.
There we
So I
go.
wasn't ripping off Hawkman, but and I looked and I said, "Holy shit! I got to show this to Dave." I don't have it here, but I'll show it to you. But it had like
Please.
a character in his
Please.
different configurations, his face turned around, and I said, "I don't even remember doing this." So I was actually like planning out the character, you know.
That's
so
awesome.
It's amazing the stuff you do when you're a kid.
It is. And what Doug and I figured out after doing 5 issues is it's a lot easier to just draw covers and create characters than to write a full story. So after 5 issues, we started creating like the Freedom Teens, who are in no way a complete and total ripoff of the Teen Titans, and all these others. And guys, I have almost all of it, all that stuff, all that artwork.
Fantastic.
And some of it I can get to pretty easily. So I will maybe I'll post some of it on Instagram or send it your way. But I have a ton of that stuff from when we were kids. You know, these, you know, this doesn't happen without this, you know.
Right.
You got to start somewhere. And you know, as a kid, it was frustrating not knowing that you were trying to draw like the really good comic artist and you couldn't because you didn't have the time or the talent or really the combination. I still don't have the time and the talent that those guys have. But yeah, it is called swiping. We swipe the heck out of stuff. Almost every image in this is like some, you know, maybe not in the originals because we just drew people standing there stiffly. But as we got a little better, we started, let's rip off this, we'll rip off that, and it works for this panel. And we swiped like crazy. So
Dave, all you're doing is drawing people standing swiftly. You have at least a 6-issue miniseries in Image waiting for you. So, you know, put lots of pouches on them. You'll be fine.
Yeah. Hey, hands and feet are hard for me too. So, you know, yeah. So that's what I got for you guys.
That was amazing.
Great.
That's great.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you so much for bringing me on your show, Gary. And
so much fun, dude. I'm glad to finally have you on here.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We talked about this a while ago and we just kind of didn't connect. And I'm so glad we did because this was a blast.
Well, I knew you'd have some great stuff, you know, because the one thing I like about you is you're very passionate about the things that you like. You know, and the whole focus of this show is just showing things that you love and connecting with them.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about money. It's about sentimental.
Yeah. No, I mean, most of these, you know what? I think they're pretty cool. And if you guys are interested, you can get them for pretty cheap. So, you know, I recommend them. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think like some of the best reads you'll ever get are in your dollar bins and people ignore them.
Yeah. Yeah. Is this a big key? Yeah. Is this the first appearance? I'm like, is it a great story with great art? That's what I care about.
Some of the first appearances are garbage books.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we shall not name them so as not to offend.
Right.
But
But
yeah,
there's plenty of them that aren't even worth cracking open.
yeah, they're not necessarily great reads, and that's why I fell in love with comic books, because I loved reading them. I loved the artwork, and give me a great story and great art. And it's honestly why I moved to trades. It was just an easier way to read them. I didn't have to bag and board. I could put them on a shelf. I didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. Value. I could read no ads. I could read the entire story.
Yeah.
And that's what I like most about comics. I love the characters. I love the stories. And that's why I read to this day.
So I'm gonna, because you're a trade guy, I'm gonna show you
Mhm.
my favorite trade of all time, and no one ever guesses it. And
All
it's
right.
one of my favorite stories ever.
Okay.
And you're pretty well read. It's by Mike W. Barr and Brian Bolin, and it's considered the first maxi series.
Oh,
And that is Camelot 3000.
3000. Yes, I have.
I read this like every 3-4 years. I just love this story.
That's cool.
The art's
That's cool.
amazing in it.
Yeah.
Um,
Bolin's unbelievable. Yeah.
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 And it's so good. And that book has stayed with me ever since I found that story. Like,
That's awesome.
so like I think found it in the 90s. And
Yeah.
I've always had a copy of that to read.
That's fantastic. That's so cool. Yeah. And that's for love of the books. So have a good
Right.
night, Mark. Yeah, that's what matters to me most. That I love the stories, I love the art, I love the characters. And when and look, they don't always get it right. In fact, more often than not, it doesn't come together. But when it does, it's alchemy, it's magic.
Right.
I could just read it and reread it. So
Yeah. When it clicks, it clicks.
it does. It does.
All right. So that was Dave, that was fantastic, man. What a great show. What great books.
Thank
Of
you.
course, awesome stories. And I absolutely loved your book with your personal extended story was amazing. I mean, what a great memory with you and your brother, right? Something to
Yeah.
cherish forever.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But we'll go around now like we usually do, and we'll see what everyone's got coming up. We'll start with Chuck, because he was the first one that confirmed to come on as a co-host tonight. So Chuck, what's coming up for you, sir?
Well, I'm going to be on Joe. We're doing the espresso mail call next week. And then I'll be on with the crowd as we talk about the afterlife of comics, or comics, what happens with our collections. And I believe that was Steve's suggestion for the topic. And so we're looking forward to doing that.
Yep, I got to get you guys the questions so you'll have them all,
Yeah.
so you can think about them and percolate on them.
Well, let's go right to you now, Steve. What's coming up for you?
Not a whole hell of a lot. I did something really, really dumb and made a video of it, so I think I'll probably post it. It's 40 minutes of me building this Flago. I'm going to call it Flago because it's not really Lego. It's Lego, but it's fake Lego, so it's Flago. So I have a 40-minute video of me building this stupid thing.
Nice.
It's ridiculous. So you know what? I'm going to post it. I'll probably get thousands of freaking hits.
A 10-year-old could probably do it in 10 minutes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I was struggling with it, and then I broke pieces, and then I'm cursing at it, and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty funny.
Just wait till you see the 3-year-old responses in the comments. So, you know.
I
Right.
could have done it in 2 seconds. 40 minutes to build this stupid Jeep.
Joe, what's coming up for
Only
you?
8
bud?
pieces too.
Oh yeah.
Well, tomorrow night is the Anachronic College of Comic Book Knowledge with Milt, and we're going to be doing Howard the Duck. Gary's going to be the professor to help me out tomorrow night. I'm putting finishing touches on, I mentioned last night, the first of a series calling Who Is? And the first one is going to be Who is Wonder Woman? Okay.
Cool.
And so I think it's pretty cool. I'm enjoying doing the research and putting it together. I still got some things to do. I'm going to try to see if I could get it out next week, but no guarantees, about that. And then as Chuck, and I don't know if Steve mentioned, but as Chuck mentioned, we have the Espresso Mail Call a week from tomorrow, and the Comic Book Crowd 2 weeks from tomorrow. And other than that, too, I've got a couple of other things. I got a comics my mom let me keep. I went downstairs and pulled out a bunch of Brave and the Bold comic books from that time period.
Ooh,
Talk about some silly
cool.
covers and silly stories, but it's kind of fun. So we'll see.
exactly, Matt Woods.
Yeah, Joe wanted just to post. Well, yeah. Well, if you watch the other show that I did with the AOKs, you saw some Gal Gadot there. So that's it. So those are kind of in process. The pre-recorded, and the live shows are coming up 1 week starting tomorrow night.
I know you've really picked up your live show content in the last couple months.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, and I've cut back a little bit on the videos because, frankly, I got a lot of other stuff going on, and doing the videos the way I want to do them with the research and the B-rolls and all that, as Dave knows with the DC Watch stuff, it takes time, you know, and so I just got to fit it in when I can. So I'll get those videos out when I can get them out.
Nice. So coming up this week, coming up for the rest of the month for me, on the 18th, we have Milt on the first vinyl edition of the 1011, where he's bringing on records and comics. So that'll be a first for this channel as well. On the 20th, next Thursday, we have Pocan Joe coming on to do an all military books comics episode of the 1011. On the 21st, you'll have me, John's Comics for Kids, and Cliff talking about the 10 stories that change comics forever, whether good or bad. The top 10 stories we think had caused the biggest change in comics. I don't know why I can't talk all of a sudden. Then on the 25th, we got Steve over there coming back on, probably for his like third or fourth appearance. And then we're ending the month with Jerry the Jitterbug. So he'll be back on to do his 1011. Now he's done the In the Hot Seat twice. This will be his first time on the 1011. So get ready for some good Golden Age books from Jerry. And then Dave, we always go with our guest last. You got anything coming up, sir?
You know what? Well, next month I'm planning on doing another 1011 just with figures and toys. Thank you, Joe. So I'm excited for that. But in terms of YouTube stuff, I don't think I have anything going. I did want to say one last thing. At the very beginning of the show, when my daughter was FaceTiming, this is my wife's computer. My 19-year-old daughter was right upstairs. She was trying to reach my wife. I wasn't blowing off my daughter. Like, to give some context, like as to you know what was going on there. So, but yeah, no, I'm looking forward to coming back. And I don't think I have the full list of items yet, but I'm excited to put it together and do this again because this was so much fun, Gary. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, you know, I hope that you're going to stress out over the next month putting those toys together.
Yeah.
They're gonna be in and out of boxes and bins, and he's gonna keep swapping them out.
Yeah, you should put together a special video, a special action figure comedy video for that show. You should do something.
That's interesting. Now you shooting me like Doug does. No, we'll have to see.
Well, if you do, we can play it. You just have to send it to me.
I hear you. I got you. Yep. We'll have to see.
Yeah, amazing. But so as always, I want to say thank you to my co-hosts. The show's always better with more than my voice on it. So thank you guys so much for your time and your friendship. Appreciate you guys being on. And of course, the show doesn't work without a fantastic guest. And Dave, you came on and you knocked it right out of the park, buddy. That was great. No matter what Joe told me you were going to end up doing, I thought you were fantastic.
That sounds like Joe.
It can't always be right.
And of course, what a fantastic crowd. We saw a lot of new faces who I assumed were here to see you. Hopefully they'll keep checking out the channel. But thank you to all the new faces that showed up tonight. And thank you to all the faces that continue to show up week after week after week that make this such a fun show to do. Just to see you guys in the chat all the time and talking with each other and interacting with our panel and our guests is amazing. So thank you all so much. And as I like to end these things, got to find my brand here. Keep it casual.